Hi, friends. Welcome to Sybil's Lab of Cartomantics. I'm Amelia,
I'm Danielle.
and we've got a fun one today. Danielle, tell us what we're talking about.
Today we are doing a deck list genre kind of thing. We're going to be talking about the elements and decks. We've each chosen one deck per element. We're going to talk a little bit about how that element functions in our practice and why that deck is the right choice for that element. And you and I have talked a little bit. We didn't want to choose decks that were just superficially fiery looking or watery-ish. We wanted things that are sort of substantive in conversation with the element and really represent and elevate that part of our practice. So with that in mind, we're going to go in Golden Dawn order because this girl loves the Golden Dawn. And that leads us off with fire. Amelia, our Leo, what'd you choose for this one?
Well, let's talk a little bit about how what does it mean to engage fire, or what does it look like to work with this element? So for me, when I work with fire, what I am engaging, and this was the hardest one for me to pick one deck because I often want to work with fire, being the Leo Sun, Aries rising that I am. For me, fire is, obviously creativity, passion, all of the things that we think about when we think of fire kind of in a typical way. But fire, there's something kind of boundless about fire, and something kind of, it's like the opposite of control. It is freedom of movement, freedom of thought, freedom of expression. There's an electrifying aspect of fire that it's this is where I go for inspiration. This is the element that I turn to when I want to explore and discover. This is the suit of discovery for me. I also think of fire as kind of if I'm putting the suits in order, I think of fire as the beginning, because to me that's that first spark and that first kind of awakening, if you will. And so decks that fall into this category for me are those kind of awakening, discovery, exploration kind of decks. Do you want me to say my deck, or do you want to talk about how you work with fire? Or
I can say a little bit about how I work with fire. And if you are brand new to the elements and the tarot, this would normally be the wand suit. Wands, rods, batons, that suit. So it sounds like what's coming through for you is that fire is a native element to you. In some ways, I think of the elements in that way, like what is more difficult, and that influenced my choice. Sometimes I need help getting into that place. So fire is not a native element to me. I would say that probably air, and second to that, water is where I'm sort of more comfortable, which in part means that it's easier for me to use any kind of deck to dig into those elements. For fire, which I find a little more difficult, and for earth, which I find super difficult, I really need a deck that's going to be supportive in that regard. And fire for me sort of functions in three core ways. First, especially this summer, I was pretty angry, and in a macro sense. So at the moment, right? Life's good, but it is a challenging moment in time. And I feel like I was feeling the anger of the moment. So fire is an element that I sit with to try to texturize and explore that feeling so that it doesn't overwhelm, but it also isn't running away from fire or anger or anxiety or whatever. It's sort of digging in and leaning in and figuring out how that feeling works for me. Fire is also the place that I find creativity, energy, rejuvenation to do creative work. It's where I feel recharged and excited. And I think maybe I don't sort of lean into fire so much for that, because I think I get the ideas here and I go to the elements to execute the other elements. But I've needed ideas. It's my sun year, so I've been spending some time in fire. And also, I have described myself in my sort of weird, hinky kind of spirituality. And I think that fire is where the veil is thinnest between the divine and the not divine, right? I like the Golden Dawn. Fire is the first of those elements that is between us and what is above us. And so this is the element that I think brings me closest to something ephemeral. and something transcendent. So what is the transcendent, the furious, and the creative, whatever. It is a dynamic element. There's a lot happening in this element.
There's like fire has so many different sides to it. And I think the other elements do as well. But I think it's like you mentioned, fire is a native element to me, so that I'm able to like find more.
Yeah.
Okay, so the deck that I am bringing, which is going to, like I've shown this 8 million times before, but I am bringing the Jean Noblet Tarot de Marseille. It is like, I mean, all of the stuff that I'm talking about, discovery, exploration, that feeling of like I feel like when I come to this deck, and when I come to Marseille generally, but especially this deck, there's something really special about this one. I am always finding something new, and I'm always like I feel such an immense freedom of movement when I come to the Noblet and when I come to Marseille. I don't feel contained, and like I feel like my fire can really just like consume and like stretch its flames in all directions. I find working with Marseille incredibly inspiring. Just like it like all of my synapses start firing in a really particular kind of way that other decks just don't do. So yeah, that's my fire deck.
I want to ask, I think, and I could be wrong about this, that this would be a surprising pick to people. Maybe not for you, right? We know that, like, if we know you, we know that Tarot de Marseille is a place where you do a lot of work. I think most people would not find this to be a fiery deck. So what is it that you think that you're seeing in this deck, in the architecture of Tarot de Marseille, that would be so invisible to people who may not find fire in this deck?
I think so I've had many conversations with people who had a similar experience to me when they discovered Marseille, and it kind of was like they felt like their eyes were opening to tarot in a completely new way, and they felt like kind of whatever was constricting them in their previous approach to tarot is gone, and it's like, oh, the freedom that's available. And so I think, and I feel that deeply. Like for me, it was such a light bulb moment to pick up a Marseille deck and figure out how to read it. And it's one of those like my experience and my relationship to it has not stopped developing and growing, kind of in that same fiery way. Like fire, if you feed it, grows and becomes bigger and this kind of like and hotter. And I think that is like over the trajectory of me reading with Marseille, like it has not gotten smaller. It has only gotten bigger and hotter and more intense. And I think, yeah, it's the freedom, I think ultimately is what it is. It's the freedom and the kind of, I don't know, it feels like every time I turn a corner with it, there's like something new waiting that I wasn't expecting.
I like that. That is fire. All right, for my choice, I chose Tarot Avatara for a video that I did this summer about summer rage. I think it was rage that I said. I chose this deck. So this deck is by Gabby Angus West. It is a sort of story in 79 cards of Frida Kahlo, her life as an artist. For folks who don't know her work, she is a now past Mexican artist who has a phenomenal story and an incredible body of work and a really complicated life that isn't just a celebratory tarot. She has a sort of complicated life and complicated relationships. So I find there to be productive tension in this deck. For example, this is her sister, Christina. Her sister had an affair with her husband. That's a complicated
Diego
challenge.
Rivera, also a famous painter.
Yeah, Diego, her husband, also a famous painter, more famous than her in their lives, much less famous than her in their afterlives. And like, we love it, girl. So, you know, she is, I find her, here's my challenge with this deck as I'll share some more of it. It is just fire. Like I couldn't do anything except fire with this deck. It's too hot. Like it feels so hot to me, and not just because of the color palette. She is, as an artist, fire incarnate. She was so prolific, and so passionate, very unbounded in her feelings and creativity. But I find her, look at this Eight of Swords. I find her life story to be both really encouraging and inspirational and extraordinarily tragic. And that's why working with this deck is not easy. I am challenged by working with this deck. It doesn't always make me feel good. Actually, here, this Three of Swords is Diego, her sister, and her in the middle, being cuckolded, right? Like it's
That's hard.
it is really hard. It's really hard. She, if you know her story, really wanted a child and had a number of failed pregnancies. And so a lot of these are based on her actual paintings, her painting images of her with children who, children she was never able to have. Her husband, who was 20 years older than her, was extremely lascivious and had lots of affairs with lots of different models and others, like sisters. So I am challenged by this. I've worked with this deck, absolutely, but I haven't worked it. I am sparing about when I work with it. And in some ways that makes sense, because here's the Lovers card, the two of them. What was I gonna say? I find like fire is hot and challenging, and it brings up a lot of stuff. So I take care about when I use this element. She was seriously injured in her late teen years, bisected by a tram pole when she was in an accident, and so had mobility issues for the rest of her life, and had, I think, a leg amputated before she passed. She died really young. I mean, and yet, like, you can't just, I feel sorry for Frida. She's so phenomenal, and her work is so phenomenal. So this deck brings up a lot of stuff.
She was such a deep thinker too. Like, have you ever read any of her journals?
I have. Not much of her work, but like say a little bit more about the parts of her story that you know about.
And like thinking especially about how you're relating this to fire, a lot of her writing work is she had such a poetic relationship with the world around her. She saw and interacted with the world through metaphor and the imagery. Like it was, and even in the way that she wrote, it was very imaginal. And that, like, her body of work, if I were to, I know it's very typical to like think of an artist when you think of the element of fire, but her body of work in particular feels like fire. Like it is, yeah.
I think a lot of artists tap into fire to create, and then their work brings up different kinds of stuff. Her work only brings up fire for me in the best way. I actually have a portrait of her in my bedroom. So this deck was the absolute first thing I thought of. It just feels hot. I don't even know how to explain it. It feels so warm, and I think part of that is that it feels like I need to be careful with it, right? We don't hold something that's too hot too long. So yeah, I am deliberate and sparing with the element, and in part, I think my tension with fire is that it insists on a wildness that is like, that can be a little, if you want to be careful with it, like, can be a little tricky. So I love that. We have different competing relationships with fire, but let's talk about our next element of water. How does water work for you?
So water, typically cups in tarot. For me, water is like, in the way that you were describing fire as ephemeral, like I absolutely feel like there's an ephemeral quality to fire, but like water just like takes that up a notch. To me, water is like those things that I feel but can't quite put words to. It's all of the kind of like darker, murkier sort of aspects of myself that I'm trying to kind of bring to the surface so that I can examine them a little bit more. When I'm doing watery work, it's when I like have strong emotions, but I'm not quite sure how to identify them. They feel hazy and foggy. And there's a little bit of a tenderness to them, but also some like, I mean, I think of water, I think of like a tempest. Like they can move things and they can do some damage. But it's that like, it is the work that tries to define what feels undefinable. That's for me, water. It slips through the fingers, you know? And I try to concretize that in some sort of way so that I can do something with it. To me, that's water work. What does water work like for you?
Water is, I think, actually maybe where I spend most of my time in tarot. Water is where I think I go when I read for others. It feels like I need to get in their pool. Like you come with a question and I ask enough questions of you to like figure out what water I'm in and explore from there. I feel it as a healing element. I think this is the element where for me a lot of healing happens. I feel very watery in part, I think, because I have very strong emotions and I pull my emotions back from fire unless I'm like in a summer of rage. And, you know, I don't know, us tarot folks and us humanities folks, you are a performer, a theater professional. I think a lot of it, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, a lot of the magic happens in water. It feels like the best performers, the performers I really enjoy, at least trigger water for me. Like I feel a depth of feeling. It feels like that's what they are able to activate. So that's, if fire is where I get the spark of creativity, I think water is where I feel like I need to sit to do the work, like whatever kind of work it is, including like sort of emotional stuff, emotional work, creative work. I feel like I'm successful at my work when I'm able to engage with other people's emotions and all kinds of work that I try to do. So I'm fascinated by this element. So if you know the traditional Golden Dawn associations, it's associated with Cancer, with Scorpio, and with Pisces. And those associations are the Chariot. I don't think a lot of people associate the Chariot with water. Death. I don't think a lot of people associate death with water unless they happen to know astrological associations, and the Moon, which made a, you know, that feels like it makes a lot of sense. Like we go deep, and sometimes the water
is also a watery card, is it not? The Hanged Man?
Yes. The Hanged Man is elemental water. Perfect. Yes. So the Hanged Man is like water, period. He doesn't get a zodiac sign or a planet. Unless he gets Neptune. But yes, he is elemental water. And a lot of Hanged Man images show him like sort of being dunked in water. Ashira shows him as her in water, sort of hanging in the deeps. So it feels like a lot of stuff happens in water. But if death is not necessarily a place where I see a lot of emotional stuff happening, if that's not what I associate with it, it certainly triggers a lot of emotional stuff. So yeah, this is like, it feels like a native element to me. This was the trickiest pick for me. But what was your deck choice? And tell us a little bit about that.
So from the deck that I picked is the Rain Shadow Tarot. This is, of the decks that I have here, this is the newest deck to me. I got this kind of mid last year, but even since then, it is absolutely done so much water work for me. And it's like when so the question I asked myself, I like opened my cabinet with all my decks in it, and I was like, okay, I want to do the work of fire. What deck am I going for? I want to do the work of water. What deck? Like that was the question I asked myself. I was like, if I were to sit down and want to do some of this type of work, what would the deck that I would go for? And it was Rain Shadow. This aesthetically feels kind of like an earthy deck. It's got textures and it's very stone like. But I find that this is the deck that kind of will go into the depths with me. And you've described it before as this deck like it holds grief really well. And grief work is absolutely watery work for me. That's like, you know, we're not in the anger stage of grief. We are in the like emotions that feel out of control stage of grief, and this does that. But it also does that kind of like contemplative, like going into the depths and just like being quiet kind of work.
It is a quiet deck
That like is also a part of that watery stuff for me. I mean, a lot of like I said, it like concretizes the things that feel, you know, like, I don't know, murky is the word that I keep going towards, probably because it feels like swampy and watery, but like it puts form to things that feel formless. But a lot of that work really is just kind of like sitting and being still and observing. And this deck will do that for me. This deck also speaks beautifully in like symbolic and poetic language, which I feel like is water. Like it does not come to the surface logically at first. But if you sit with it long enough, like it starts to make sense. And yeah, I don't know. This just it does that sort of like quiet, still processing type of work. Yeah, I know you like this deck.
I really like that deck. It was a deck that I considered for Earth. But I understand. I think it is the quiet, like it holds the abyss like the inner abyss in a way that feels really true and quiet and honest. So I understand that.
And there's something about the textures of it all. Like, I mean, just the way Claire Mack like employs texture in her work, like it feels like I'm able to see the texture of my emotions, you know, like it feels like like they become, you know, something that I can do something with.
About that deck in a way that makes me think of your relationship to Margarita Peterson. Would you say similar?
And I considered pulling Margarita Peterson out for this, but to me, Margarita Peterson is such a like that is like a spiritual deck. Like if we were to have like also brought in like a spirit element, that would have been like 100%. Although I've worked with Margarita Peterson from a grief like standpoint. But yeah, it feels like I am connecting to something kind of beyond when I'm working with that deck.
I like that. It is very archetypal, very like what is underneath everything. I like that.
Yeah, it feels ancient. I don't know.
Yeah, the handprints and footprints feels a little like Heindel in that regard to me. All right, for my choice, I chose Tarot of Echoes. This is the back of this deck. I wouldn't choose this deck just because it's watercolor. That's ridiculous. I have a lot of watercolor decks, but I do find that watercolor in particular, well, let me say this. If you look at this art, why am I not? Anna Turian's art, I don't like her art, at least for me, always evokes water. Like and water in a storytelling sense. I feel her images as profoundly story driven. Like this high priestess who's looking into a cauldron is her kind of high priestess. And it's exactly this that makes me think of water. This Empress, I had a lot of problems with this Empress, but then I saw her talk about it and I had less problems. It's a choice, but the only way I could get to this choice, because it is a very unusual Empress, is the story she told. And not with all mediums of art do I have very particular associations, but watercolor, I do have a very particular association with water, with like with a kind of quietness, a kind of gentleness. Certainly people, artists can execute watercolor differently, but I normally see it and normally engage with it in terms of its muted volume. It's
Well, and of course it engages the actual like water, like literal water. But there's something interesting about watercolor is that you cannot push it. You can't force it. Otherwise it looks like a mess.
And there's no fixing a mistake. Like you have to surrender. That's what it is. I associate like the medium of watercolor with a kind of surrender and
let the water carry the pigment where it wants it to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, I mean, there is room on these images too. I also see these images and feel like there is room for my emotions. Like she has done some stuff, like pricked the feelings part of me and left room. You know, as I said, I engage with water in lots of different ways. We all engage with all of the elements in a lot of different ways. But the ways that I engage with water differently, in some ways, feel deeply disconnected, like two very different ways. The way I talked about fire, they're all kind of woven together. Water over here is storytelling and like leaning into the beauty of storytelling. And over here is like deep down under the moon, feeling like you're drowning, maybe like that kind of stuff. This deck absolutely taps into that storytelling place for me. This is a deck I would use for clients and doing that kind of water work. I haven't used it a lot for myself and I want to work with it more, but it's absolutely, because I haven't used it as much as I would eventually like to, I almost didn't choose it, but it was the first deck that came to mind for water, actually. In some ways, I think I tried to choose decks, not just that supported my work with that element, but I almost only align with one element. Like Tarot Avatara, we're not gonna really do water work together. Like if I need to really dig deep into that and excavate that element, this deck feels very coded to water for me. And because I have the good fortune of having a lot of choices to make, it is not the deck I would choose to do fire kinds of work or something. But what are your thoughts on this?
I could definitely, I mean, Anna Turian's work and her Oracle of Echoes, that was kind of the predecessor of this tarot deck, is to me such, I do not own that deck, but like from what I have seen of it, it is such a watery Oracle deck. Yeah, I could see that as a fire deck as well for me and like how I would use it. I don't have that deck either. But I absolutely see the space it makes in like the realm of water. Her
Wands. It's such an interesting watery Six of Wands.
No, I love it. And I love what you mentioned about like water as a space for story. Yeah.
And both of us are right? Like I'm a lit professor, you're a theater professional. We love stories. We love to make up stories and play frolic in the land of stories. Look at this Ace of Cups. This is, yeah. She is the Anna Turian is the mistress of water. Like there's so much room on this card, you know? So that is my choice for water. Any final comments about this before we move to air?
No. Yeah, so air. So air is the hardest. I know that's your easiest.
Yeah.
It is the hard. Air is usually so outside of tarot. I have no difficulty being analytical and like a thinker, an overthinker, if you will. And for me, tarot is where I can go to tap into the other parts of myself that I don't get to use quite as much in my regular life. So I don't usually go to tarot for air work. It's not my first kind of mode of operation within this world. To me, air is definitely, it is logic. It is it's like really ordered and systemized type of work. And it is it doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room. That's, to me, that's what air is. And yeah.
You're like your teeth. You're coming to air with cold feet.
I am. And I think of air. So in my like life as a theater professional, I spent several years as a stage manager. And if you're unfamiliar with that line of work, a stage manager, if you know what like a project manager is, that's kind of the work of stage management. They are the person that knows where everybody is supposed to be at any given time, where every item is supposed to be at any given time. Like they are the people, they literally have a book of information that like, if you need to know anything about this production, you can go to the book that the stage manager created and find out. Like it is a mental load of colossal proportions as being a stage manager. And you like hold all of this information for a very short amount of time. You hold it for the length of the run and then you let it all go and you forget about it. And because of that, like that to me, that's air. That's the air work, is like holding the information, like being a basket for knowledge. And because I do a lot of that work, I don't stage manage anymore, but I do work that is kind of adjacent to that. And because I do that outside of tarot, I don't want to do that when I go to tarot. Yeah, but that's air to me. And I think when I'm willingly going to tarot because I want air is when I need order and I need structure and I need like, okay, I need to go to tarot in a way that feels expected. I need to go to tarot in a way that doesn't involve guesswork, where I don't have to be the one, where tarot is meeting me like 75% of the way and I just have to like take a step forward and I'm there with it. You know, my like fire and water work with tarot is like tarot will come to me 25% and I have to fill that gap with my own thoughts. And the work of air is like tarot is going to come as close as it possibly can for me and I just need to take a step and I'm there with it. I need to pick up the book and read it, and I'm on it. And sometimes that does feel good. Sometimes it feels good to not have to do so much lifting in my card work. Frankly, when I read for other people, I'll often pick decks that feel a little bit like air to me, that do that kind of air work, because it's such rational and ordered thinking, and I'm not having to like explain metaphors to people. But yeah, what is air to you? This is a native element for you.
It's definitely a native element for me. So that means that for the most part, decks that I think tend to be very coded to air for people, for example, like Tabula Mundi, are not just that for me, because I feel so literate in them that like I do practical work with that deck, or I do lots of feelings work during COVID, man, me and my feelings where we were very in it. So I was thinking about what this element is for me when I'm thinking just the element, because in some ways air is often a road to other kinds of work. It's either a friction, so like I'm having to push past my instinct to get hyper rational or like deeply intellectual and reason my way around something. I'm trying to kind of grow out of that, grow past that, or I am trying to learn something. And so I use air in that way. Like it's a great tool. Like I've been doing the tarot seriously. I'm saying it that way, that I'm trying to do a series of videos every other Friday. And that's like thinking through tarot. That is air stuff. But like, for example, your first choice, the Noblet, that would be an air deck for me because I'm doing thinking work because it is not a native deck for me. So like I'm strictly in air when I'm working with that, when I'm trying to learn something. So actually, that's a good example. Decks that may align with another kind of element usually go down the road of air because I feel like I need to become literate in their symbols. And like air is where the symbolic language gets accumulated for me. Like I think
Oh,
that's
that's firework for me.
interesting. So we both kind of like live in those spaces. We live in the land of our symbols, but my land of symbols tends to be like collections of words. I think in language and words a lot. And like, you know, air is like the land of argument and talking and all of that. So we usually stop off in air in order to get to another place that I would eventually go. I don't, you know, Terre de Marseille doesn't live in air for me, but like we stop off or get to something else, especially if it's been a while.
Air is a vehicle.
Yes, it's a vehicle, and it's also a place that's so comfortable that I can do other kinds of work there. But for this choice, I wanted to find a deck that was just activating air and lived in air. So I'll share, why don't I share mine first and then we'll share yours because this goes along with what I'm talking about. This is the Infinite Door Tarot. This deck is all air for me, and here's why. This deck is so like its symbolic language is so perplexing in a beautiful way. Like the part of me that loves art and loves tarot as a medium of art, kind of first and foremost. That's how I first got to loving tarot in other ways. We can't even get past that because I'm too busy like, what is this piece of art that I'm investigating? Right? Like it feels like the product of someone's fire and they handed it to me and said, make sense of this.
Well, it's so funny that for you, this explore, like I think for you, what I'm getting is that air is the suit of exploration for
Yes.
you. Mine is fire. That's where I explore. That's where I like play. And you play and explore in air. That's fascinating. Anyway, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No. That's exactly right. Like this 5 of Wands, I gotta sit and like think. So that's the air, right? Like I'm sitting and thinking, like meditating maybe, but before I get to the meditating and the journaling and like, what does that make me feel? Whatever, I gotta do a lot of thinking. And maybe eventually, when I am down the road, really confident in the symbolic language of this deck, we're going to go other places. Like I'm not going to have to stop off in air, but I'm telling you now, I know it's going to be a long road. Every time I look at this deck, I marvel at its oddity. It is so weird and so gorgeous and so like look at the hands. Like so confusing and so shamelessly confusing. I just I'm so
It is surrealism. I mean, that is like a Dali painting. Like
it's 78 Dolly paintings, and it's Dolly paintings that aren't just on a wall. It's like handed to you as a tool and like go make meaning with this. What a beautiful project. but I didn't even know. I'm so glad I got it. It's a delight that it's mass market. I mean, it's really a special deck to be so accessible. And I really love that. I had seen cards and I thought, ooh, pretty, different, interesting. I want to do some work. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I really didn't. I mean, look at that. It's just so it's a thing. And I don't think this is for others an air deck. And I don't think it exists or was created from a place of air. But my relationship to it and the element that it activates is entirely air because I'm so confused. Maybe air is the land of confusion. It's the land of learning and confusion. It was air I tried to tap in with my students a lot, or when I teach still kind of, because that's where people tend to get stuck.
Well, I think air is where you figure things out.
Yes.
Like that's where you go to figure things out. For me, that is absolutely fire. But I think, yeah, for you, like that's where you kind of untangle threads.
Absolutely. Because in part, I think I feel the need for myself to be able to articulate, like to make meaning of something in language, and air is where language lives for me. And as a professor, like I gotta put stuff in words.
Yeah. When I have to like feel it here, I have to feel it in me first before I can do anything else with it.
So interesting. You and I were talking about the different ways that brains work and like people who have an inner monologue and all of that stuff, the interesting science around inner monologues. Talking supports my thinking. And I think fire supports your thinking. Like I figure out what I'm thinking as I talk it through. That's why I think I live in air. But yes, that is like a beautiful mess of confusion. And air is where confusion and discovery lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. That is unexpected, but I like it. I'm Tabula Mundi. Like, which is fascinating because for me, the Thoth, Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot, is an earth deck. Like that
really?
it is not what I brought for my earth deck, but like that is when I feel like I want to feel grounded, I go to the Thoth. This deck, I think it's because Mel's approach is so rational, so ordered, so logical. So she has gone so far as to, if you're unfamiliar, in the Golden Dawn system, the minors have a planet and a zodiac association. So, like, the Seven of Cups is Scorpio and Venus, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Scorpio and Venus. So it includes elements in Mel's deck. She has included symbolic elements from both Death, which is Scorpio, and the Empress, which is Venus. It is like, and once you like crack that code, which you had to explain to me, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. It's so ordered. It's so, every detail is so well thought out.
It's so
everything is there on purpose.
Yeah.
Everything has a very direct meaning. Like there's no kind of creative traipse down some winding path. Like, I mean, and not to say that Mel isn't a creative thinker. She absolutely is. But it is a direct, clear, and straightforward like path to what it is that she's getting at in each card. You talk about Chariot as like she actually put it in the card. She was like, here, Chariot is a water card. We're talking about Cancer here, friends. And yeah, it is. I mean, if I don't want to do any guesswork with my tarot, there is no guesswork here. She knew what she was doing. She put it on the card and she said, have at it. And sometimes I find that really restraining, and sometimes I find that really helpful, depending on what I need. And like there is like an aspect of air that is like the learning. And with this deck, I feel like there's always something to discover with Mel's work. But unlike, for example, with the Tarot de Marseille, where it's like this, I don't know what's coming next. Like, there is a way to learn this deck, and there is a way to learn this system and how Mel kind of approaches, Emma Moline approaches this system. And read her book. Like, that's it. Read her book and study the cards from that aspect. And I mean, I appreciate it for that, because sometimes I do need that. Sometimes I need like very structured or a very structured and ordered approach to learning and to reading and to experiencing tarot. And that's it.
Maybe that's why that's my favorite deck, because it's so clear that at least with that deck, air was her native element. I think that deck operates in all of the elements for me. I would probably put that in spirit if we were doing the fifth big, encompassing element. But yeah, like I trust her explanation. I feel like she has explained it to me, and I'm like, I got it, sister. I can do all the other stuff.
Yeah. It is a great deck. But yeah, it's like when I was looking, it was hard for me to conceptualize, like, when do I willingly work with air? But when I figured it out, it was like that deck. That's it.
That makes sense.
That is an air deck. Okay, Earth.
Is Earth your favorite or second favorite?
Right now,
Uh-huh.
in February of 2026, Earth is probably my second favorite. There are times when Earth is absolutely, like, that's where I lean. Like, I would say Fire and Earth are like really close together, and for kind of similar but different reasons. So kind of my experience with Earth is something that is it's like embodied. It's the things, like, it is appealing to the senses, and it's appealing to, like, there's a beauty to it. There is a like pragmatism to Earth. And when I think like, man, I really want to do Earth work, it is work that is like grounding. It's work that like kind of takes me out of the sort of like mania of fire and down into like, okay, what do I see in front of me? What am I physically experiencing right now? There's something so experiential to me, both about fire, but also about Earth and the way that I engage Earth. It is very much connected to my, like, to physical experiences. There's some of it that's also like thinking about my daily life and how I order and move throughout my day. But again, all of that kind of comes back to that like embodied experience and how I move through and engage with my day. And yeah, I usually can really recognize like, okay, it is time for me to do some earth work, because I start feeling a little unmoored. And earth is an anchoring work for me. It's like, okay, let me get my feet back on the ground. Yeah, what is earth for you?
So earth is the most difficult element for me to work with. And it is like, it's where the ancient stuff lives. It's where the mess lives. It's where, like, when I feel like I'm doing earth work with tarot often, that means I really literally like, in what order should I do this stuff I have to do today? Right? Like, tell me how I can make practical, like, make productive magic of this mess I am laying in front of you, tarot deck. So it's often just the nitty-gritty. It's like the like, let's work out how the space around me is going to operate, or my actual material actions. That is Yeah, that's how it works. And that I do quite regularly, actually. But there is a deeper kind of earth work. Like the earth work I really like that I am exploring more and more. It's not necessarily like a native place quite yet, is a lot of that ancient stuff, like the ancestors, the dirt, the like what the stories of millennia ago. I live in the land of myth in many ways in tarot, but this is kind of the opposite of that, like temporally speaking, right? Like underground where the bones are, and then up here where like the beautiful stories of timeless whatever live. So I'm trying to hang out more with the like underground, but the on the ground, like deep earthwork, I think is stuff I have trouble with. And I don't even know quite how to articulate it. You know, yeah. I don't know how to articulate it. I feel defensive. It's funny. So the cards for Earth are the Devil, who's Capricorn, the Hierophant, who is Taurus, and the Hermit, who is Virgo. I am often defensive of the Hierophant because I feel like he has a bad name and like he does good stuff. Good stuff. You're working with the Emperor this year. Like there's good stuff with the Hierophant. Not only good stuff and a lot of difficult stuff, but there's good stuff. And yet, like I struggle in this element. So maybe that's part of the reason I'm having such a difficult time articulating it. But yeah, what is your deck? Maybe that'll help me make some sense of my early.
All right, so the deck that I immediately thought of when I think of earthwork, and I mentioned like the Thoth, but for me specifically, Lennon Smith, who's another creator on YouTube, she has a deck called the Wild Essence Thoth, which is a photographic deck. This is the earth deck for me. This is like, especially that kind of like embodied, kind of grounded earth work that I was speaking of. This 100%, I mean, first off, it's pictures of the literal earth that she uses to relate the Thoth archetypes. But I think it's also, it really taps into that, like what I was saying about like experiential, like this is tarot experienced and like moved through in a physical manner. And to me, that's like the work that this deck does. It is the literal kind of physical manifestation and experience of these different tarot archetypes and these kind of moments in time, if you will. It's like this, this 10 of Wands or the Lord of Oppression, like this feels like oppression when I look at this deck. I feel it physically in my bones. This 10 of Discs that feels lush and opulent. And like there's a lot of these images that she picked that I have like direct reference points for of moments in my own life that I got, like, it makes sense. It's like, oh yes, of course this is adjustment. Like, and I'm able to kind of really ground into and connect to that lived experience with tarot in a way that, yeah, allows me to do that kind of like really embodied and like felt work. That is earth for me. I also just love this deck.
It's fascinating. So you have the Wild Essence Thoth as your earth, you have Tabula Mundi as your air, and you said you considered putting Thoth oh no, you said you at fire, or no?
No, Thoth earth.
Oh, okay.
Thoth is earth.
Okay. All right. My pick is the Hoodoo Tarot.
Okay.
This deck recently. We were talking about cartomancy and Aunt Carolyn being the 10 or the Wheel of Fortune. This deck is immediately the deck that came to mind. It could be because it's what I've had out recently. And it's the deck that's been making me think of Earth recently. The reason, the part of Earth that this brings up for me is definitely roots and the ancient, and like it evokes for me what feels like Earth in my literal body. Like the part of me that feels like I have history connected to this grounded Earth. It feels like stories that are told here. And it, like the naming of the court cards is family. You find that in lots of decks, like, you know, son, daughter, mother, father. That is not novel, but the story of that in this deck is entirely about like your roots, your family. That's the work we're doing here. The reason that the majors are named after, let me see if I, this is my favorite card. I want to be her so much. I really want to be her so much. I got, when I first got this deck, I got the 3, 4, and 5 extra copies of the 3, 4, and 5 of coins, and I was like, auspicious. But so here is the magician, Black Herman. The majors are named after real historical figures and are tapping into a real history or like actual rooted archetypes in the Black American tradition. So that's why we have the big queen as the empress, or John Horse, an actual historical figure, is the emperor. Bishop C.H. Mason is the, I mean, like we've got a middle initial, like the Hierophant is like this dude. So this just brings up everything rooted and old and like storytelling of the past and of like a groundedness for me. So, you know, that is how Earth functions for me. It's not a lot of work I've done before though. It happens to be the Earth deck I've been working with and what has brought up that element lately. What do you think?
I am fascinated by that. To me, that feels like such a fiery deck. Like it feels like it's connecting to lineages. I mean, maybe I just relate everything back to fire. I could see that as like fire or water even. But I get it. Like I under like that like thinking about lineage and how, I mean, bodily that is, like, you know, like literal bodies of the past and people of the past. Yeah. That
It's blood and bone and feeling like we're made of the same clay, that stuff, like stories that exist in time. So I hope what comes through for people as we talk about like, no, that deck would be this element for me, is how very much decks are not coded as elements, how like we map our stuff onto them. And that's kind of amazing. Like you beautiful watcher are going to choose an entirely different water deck that I would say like, no, absolutely not. That's Earth. You're wrong. That's really cool. And I hope that's what comes through, because I think for the most part, I consider doing, I don't know if I said, I consider doing Rain Shadow as my Earth deck. Yeah, it's fascinating. And
it's all about how we connect into these elements and like, what does the work look like for you or for me or for, you know, for anybody. And then like, what deck does that work for you?
And I really, thinking about this, it did become clear that I think some of what has me assigning these decks or understanding them in these ways relates to what I feel to be my native elements and my strengths or challenges, right? Like that deck is going to sort of provoke a different kind of element or a different challenge for me on the basis of what feels easier or more natural. So I think in some ways that's the stuff like that we bring and that makes decks sort of mean or operate differently for us. That's really cool. I want to hear in the comments what your choices would be, but also if we named a deck that you want to say like absolutely not, that's fire, you're wrong. Like we're here for it. I'm here to be told off.
I also am curious if there are any decks that you feel, you commenter, watcher, viewer, feel like are all of the elements for you.
Ooh.
What deck does all of the lifting? I don't have an answer for that because I haven't thought about it.
A deck that like refuses to be. That is fascinating. Yeah, I want to see. We have challenged you. The challenge is laid out. Any final comments before we do our reading for the collective?
This was interesting to think about. Like, I think, you know, when I've typically in the past have like referred to like this is such a fiery deck or this is such a watery deck, often it is about aesthetics and the appearance of a deck. And I think that absolutely like plays into it in a way. But when it was fun to challenge myself to think about like the work. Like what does this work look like? And then what fits into that? It was different. It was not what I expected. Hello, Theo.
All right. I am using, what deck are you using? I have chosen to use the Infinite Door, which means you may have to help me a lot. I don't know why. It was what was handy.
I'm using the Wild Essence Thoth.
Okay.
All right. And our question is, how can we connect with the elements this week?
Yes. So how can we, I don't know if I showed the back of the card. Such an interesting deck.
I am
really so fascinating. It's one that I saw on Instagram. I am not the person who's like, ooh, Instagram, click buy, but I hadn't seen it anywhere else and was like, I marvel. What is this odd piece of art? This is making me feel weird things. All right. So how can we connect with the elements this week? We have the Two of Swords here.
I have the Nine of Wands and Lord of Strength is the title.
Hmm.
There's already, I see some like mirroring here. We have the moon.
Mine's like it's shooting in the moon's direction.
Yeah, well, and your like person is covered by like cosmic, like outer space hand coming over. There is a duality in the way these two cards are. I mean, definitely we see a lot of duality in the two, but she's holding the two swords with like the snake twining around them. And here we have the sun and the moon kind of like working in opposites.
Is that water at the bottom? No, that's all sky. Those clouds, or is that water at the?
I think those are just clouds.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. No, you go. No, you go.
So this is just me thinking out loud. The eye covering, the imposition of the cosmic, it really feels like saying like, this isn't a week to be looking on the ground. That is up in the air. Like your card shows an image of like what is literally up above us. And this card shows what is up above us or what is cosmic covering our eyes and kind of insisting that we look not at the ground. This doesn't feel like an earth invitation to me. It feels like there's something else happening. What are you seeing?
Yeah, and I would propose that this not be a week, like if you're wanting to engage elements, like this isn't a week to overthink it. And this isn't a week to like, oh, ponder and consider and this, that, and the other. This is a week to kind of like whatever first comes to mind, like that's the work to do. And not to think about it too hard. It does not feel like it is I agree that it's not like this is a time to engage with like kind of groundier type stuff.
It's also it's not a week for thinking our way out of it either. It feels like a sense of surrender, and these two swords saying like, bring your mess. Something's knotted together. Bring it, sit down, and like surrender to what's coming up. You know, it's
Yeah.
It's an odd one. This deck, and as we say that, I'm like, air. What's going on this card? I don't understand. It's good to be humbled. This deck is very humbling to me.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today. We had such a fun time talking about this. Like Danielle said, let us know in the comments below. What are your elemental decks that you consider for kind of engaging each of the elements? And also let us know if you think we're full of it. Like, no, that's not an earth deck. What are you talking about? Yes, of course, we'll include all relevant information below, as including where you can, get learning intensives as well as purchase readings and mentorships from us, and where you can find us online and on Instagram and on our website. And until next time, friends, we will see you in the lab.
Bye. I said bye.
Bye. Yo.